Right on. Well, hello and happy Monday, everybody. I'm over the moon thrilled about our conversation today and our call. As many of you guys are aware, we have a special guest in the house today. We have Gary Glass joining us today. Hey, Gary.
Brother Matt, everyone, great to see you. Hi, Jamie, Mitch, Rochelle, Tony, Tamara. It's great to see you. I hope I'm of value to you.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm really looking forward to today's call. And you might not be aware of this, Gary, but I actually talk about you on a number of my different coaching calls with clients in the past. Yeah, that's right.
That's
And
why
so
my
you've
ears
made a
burn.
few, that's right. But you've made a few cameo appearances on some of my coaching calls in the past, specifically when we start to talk about frequencies, energy, vibration, and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And for those of you who don't know, Gary Glass has an impressive resume. Okay. He has spent over 30 years as an expert at NASA, working as a jet propulsions expert. Okay. And this is mind blowing to me. I just love this. But right now, as we speak, a number of the projects that Gary was involved in are up in outer space. They're orbiting Earth. Okay, there's some that are orbiting Mars, even on the surface of Mars, and as far away as Jupiter, which is pretty flipping cool if you ask me. Okay. And today, though, Gary, he's a certified mentor and mindset coach with the Napoleon Hill Institute. And those of you who have worked with me for any prolonged period of time are well aware of Napoleon Hill, obviously the author of Think and Grow Rich, amongst other books. And Gary Glass today is an established entrepreneur. He's a business coach and he specializes in real estate. Okay. And he's studied directly under Napoleon Hill, Bob Proctor, one of my favorite people of all time, Earl Nightingale. Okay. And Robert Kiyosaki, if I'm correct, which is the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is an extremely powerful book. So I'm honored that you're willing to be here and join us today, Gary. And for a long time, I've felt, and we talk a lot about the power of your environment, and I think that there is tremendous power just to be in the same room as someone such as yourself, and to be involved in conversations like this, to kind of be involved in that kind of thing, as far as opening your mind, opening your imagination. So I'm really looking forward to learning from you and just spending a little bit of extra time with you today, Gary.
Oh, I know we always have a great conversation, Matt, and I love connecting with you. And any of your people that are associated with you, I'm just absolutely certain they're outstanding people.
Well, I love that. Well, hey, Gary, listen, in some of our prior conversations and some of the homework that I did while I was researching you, I learned that prior to, yeah, I know if anybody goes digging in my past, they're not going to, be real happy on some of the things that they find there too. But one of the things that jumped out at me was that prior to your work at NASA, you actually worked as was it a service repairman at a plumbing company? Is that correct?
Yep, yep.
So I'm
I was
curious.
effective. Yeah, I was effectively a Roto-Rooter guy. Actually,
Okay.
I've got my little magnet here from back in the day. I was the drain surgeon, if you will.
The drain
And
surgeon.
it was great. I was there for
Right.
about 6 years.
All right. Well, I would be very interested to hear. Maybe you could give us like a brief version of how does somebody go from being a drain surgeon working for a plumbing service repair company to spending 30 years at NASA?
Yeah, Matt, my story of going from being a plumber to being a NASA engineer is really a story of the unconscious competent. Maybe you guys have heard that phrase before, where you don't know the system that you're actually implementing to get to be successful, or you don't know how to do, you don't consciously know how to do something. However, you're just doing it. And
Right.
so that's kind of an example of the unconscious competent. If you've read any of Napoleon Hill's work, let me see which one do I want? I want this one. This is a book by Napoleon Hill called Outwitting the Devil. it's all about, well, it's a conversation between the devil and Napoleon Hill. And what's it about? It's about how the devil controls people. And effectively, the method that one of the methods that is primary in his use is people not having a definite major purpose. It's not knowing what they want, and which is exactly how I define drifting. And talking about me after high school, no clue. No clue. Didn't plan for college, didn't plan for anything. I ended up going to the local JC for a couple of years. And shoot, when I graduated high school, I would run to the litter, 4'10", 93 pounds, not too much going on. Just didn't think. Ultimately, it's exactly the opposite of Think and Grow Rich. Don't think and don't grow rich, no matter what riches mean to you. You know, and it was that way for me. So I ended up going to the local JC, and I hardly went. I rarely did my homework. Sometimes I showed up for exams. So after, you know, in my second year, I was a fry cook, and then I don't know, I did a bunch of stuff. And then I ended up being a rifle instructor for Y Camp one summer. And when I got back from, you know, Y Camp's only summer. So when you get back, you have to, you know, what are you going to do? So I ended up opening up the newspaper and just trying to find the job with the best pay. And it ended up being that with the plumbing outfit, with being the Roto-Rooter guy. And what happened one day, I you know, plumbing calls very service oriented, right? How many people have had your toilet or your kitchen sink or whatever stops up in the middle of the night? Do you want to wait for a couple of days, or you want it opened up right now? I know I was just at a big party, 200 people, their main sewer line clogged up. I'm thinking, you guys are in trouble. You're not gonna want to hang out with this. Call somebody now. So anyway, that's what happened. 2 o'clock in the morning, I get this phone call to go down to this lady's house down in Marina del Rey, which is a very wealthy area of Los Angeles, and it's right on the ocean, and it's one of the most beautiful places. And I get down there, and oh my gosh, this lady it's probably the most expensive condo that I've ever been at. Just beautiful, and like a 50-foot boat dock off of the Pacific Ocean. Just, if you can imagine, just use your imaginations and just close your eyes and just think of the most beautiful condominium with artwork and just gorgeous, and this big dock and the ocean, and it was gorgeous. Anyway, this woman she had her kitchen sink that was stopped up, and it was just overflowing, and you know how condos are, just like apartments, you know, they're stacked one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. And so whoever's using their water upstairs, it's all coming out in her apartment or in her condo. So so the plumber, you know, you do what you do. Have you guys ever seen like the underground garages with all the pipes on the ceiling?
Right. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So what the plumber does is he goes into the underground garage and he's looking for the pipe that's got the stoppage, and he takes his pipe wrench and he'll, you know, be up on his ladder, and he'll hit the pipe with the wrench. And if it goes tink, 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 you know, it's a very high frequency, you can hear it. And so you know that pipe's full of air, so that's not the pipe with the stoppage. So you go to another one, tink, 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 that's not it. You go to another one, tink, 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 that's not it. You go to another one, clunk, clunk, clunk. That pipe's full of stuff.
You got your culprit.
And whatever. So anyway, I get up underneath the pipe, and the pipe's up across, and what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to get your pipe wrench on there and open the clean out, let everything go out over to one side. And I tell you, for the life of me, I didn't have the strength. And I couldn't open that. So I do exactly what I'm not supposed to do. I take my ladder and I put it around. I put that sewer pipe right in front of my nose, and I'm able to use all the strength in my leg muscles, and I pop that sewer cap, and all of this stuff just instantly. Yeah, you're all laughing. I'm laughing too now, not then.
Yeah, not then.
And you know, it was the absolute best thing that could have ever happened to me, because that quick I went from pristine clean to dirty, gooey, smelly, greasy. However, that quick. I made the committed decision. I'm going back to school. I'm going to get a technical degree. I'm going to get a job at a big aerospace company here. I'm going to get the high salary. I'm going to get the benefits. I'm going to get the retirement plan. I'm going to get the vacations paid for, yada, and on and on and on. 8 years later, I finished, I got 2 bachelors. I've got one in math, one in physics. I got a master's in physics. Later on, I ended up getting my job at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where, like Matt mentioned, I was there for over 30 years, probably closer to 32, 33 years. I was on, I don't know if you can see it, this guy right here. You see that? You see the picture right there? Should I bring it up closer?
Yeah, sure. Vaguely see it.
There. This is me in front of the Mars Pathfinder spacecraft 30 days before launch. That's
Wow.
one of the spacecraft launch teams that I was on. This was the most exciting one for me, because that one, so this is the spacecraft up here, and that's the last rocket. About 2 days later, this whole assembly was put into the main rocket, and it took them about a month to get it hoisted up onto the what would you call it? You know, where the gurney is and the lift is, and where it's holding
Right
on.
into the fuselage type of thing.
Yeah, well, that would be what the month was for, is to put it into the fuselage of the launch vehicle, and to really have that go. So that was, oh my gosh, so much fun.
Good for you, Gary.
You've never seen a big enough firecracker until you've been to Cape Canaveral.
I'm sure. Yeah, I can imagine.
They're
Yeah.
just amazing.
Well, hearing your story about the drain surgeon, just reminds me of some of the things that they talk about in Think and Grow Rich, when Napoleon Hill says that every heartbreak, every failure, every setback always brings with it the seeds of an equal or a greater benefit. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen that and experienced that in my life. And we've had a couple of guests in the past too, who one man who was a paraplegic, who was involved in a single vehicle rollover. And looking back now, he's able to have gratitude for what was potentially the worst day in his life. It sounds like, although different, there's a terrible situation that you find yourself in, that in hindsight, actually, you could probably be really grateful for getting, all that gunk and stuff, whatever. I don't even want to think about
today, best thing that happened to me my whole life. That's the best thing.
Right.
That's the best shower. Oh,
right. And one of the interesting things that we talk a lot about here is the idea that, hey, well, if you can be grateful for something like that in 3 months or in 3 years or in 10 years or whatever that might be, and you can look back and be grateful for that situation, what can we do to start to shorten that gap and become grateful for it maybe in 3 hours or in 3 minutes or in a moment, like you were saying?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Matt, because I find that for something that you really want, that you've got burning desire that you really want, I had burning desire to go through school. And I can tell you, my first couple of years back to college, I had to learn to study all over again. I had to learn to discipline myself. That's an awful lot of what goes on in although it's not one of the primary principles to get a chapter. However, that self-confidence formula in the faith chapter is wonderful. However, if you go to the Law of Success, and I grabbed that book out of the bookcase, this was the first book that Hill published. Right. In this book, there's a whole chapter on self-control, which I equate to self-discipline, and that's probably one of the most important things that you can get. And for me, at that first year of college, just regaining the self-discipline of, okay, I need to study from these hours to these hours, and if I need to study more, I've got to kick out some other things that I'd really love to do. However, in order for me to hit my ultimate goal, I've got to have the discipline. I've got to pay the price. Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich, where there's no free lunch.
Right.
There's no free lunch. In order to get whatever you want, you must pay the price. The price that I had to pay in order to get the engineering job that I wanted was I needed a degree. I needed a I don't know, Willy Wonka's golden ticket out of the chocolate bar. And that golden ticket for me was a degree or two, and that's a whole nother story. I haven't getting into JPL and it was a golden ticket. The degrees are, and at least I love Earl Nightingale. He's got, what's the definition of success? Earl will say it every time. It's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal or a worthy goal. It's not the attainment of it. And if I'm positive that Matt would be suggesting to all of you is to write down your goals, have your goals and write them down. What I would suggest to you is if you end up getting within, I don't know, a couple of months of achieving your goal, start thinking about your next one, because you don't want to get into the post-goal achievement lull, because your mind is the, just like Hill says, the brain, it's the powerful receiving and transmitting station. If it doesn't have something to work on, and I'm talking about your subconscious mind now, if it doesn't have something to work on, it's going to start lollygagging. It's going to start drifting. And because of that, you will feel like a depression almost.
Right.
And so you really you always need to have another goal. It's like whenever I didn't understand that at the time, although I had the good fortune of working on somebody else's dream, being NASA's dreams. We need to have this done by this date. We need to have this done by this date, whether it was a cryogenic low noise amplifier or a spacecraft launch. The interesting thing with those spacecraft launches is if you don't hit the launch window, you might be taking that sucker out of the launch vehicle and going and storing it. Like, you can only launch a spacecraft to Mars about once every 2 years. If you don't get it launched on time, you're going to be mothballing that spacecraft for at least a year. Then you're going to bring it back out. Then you're going to have to retest and make certain everything works again. And so the cost of that,
right?
You're
probably talking hundreds of millions of dollars, I can imagine.
It's hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, talk about pressure, or I think sometimes that I'm under pressure, or that I have perceived pressure, and it's like, it's just little old me.
Well, you used a perfect word, perceived.
Right.
What's pressure to one guy? I can remember being the lead test conductor for the Deep Space One spacecraft. We're at the Cape, and I don't know if you understand how electricity works, but we're testing, and I'm leading the test team. And about a quarter of a mile away, a lightning strike comes and hits the ground. But it was so powerful with such a high voltage that most people think of ground, it's at a zero potential. Well, when that lightning strike hit, it raised the potential of the ground by like 15 volts, and it just locked up all of our instrumentation, locked up the spacecraft. And we were, that was a $500 million spacecraft at that point in time. And talking about, I don't know if you know what I'm saying here, but talking about having a tight one, whoo! It was
right.
There's another one I won't forget.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah, a memorable moment for sure. Yeah.
And you were just Matt, you were just talking about how do you overcome adversity and defeat, and where do you see the golden lining? How do you use that to become more powerful yourself in the future? I tell you, not much gets under my skin anymore after that one. It just
interesting,
because there's always something that can be done in every situation. There's always something. Renegotiate. There's no like it, love him or hate him, Donald Trump with the art of the deal. Renegotiate. You can always talk to people. Keep your options open, keep your communications open with no matter what you're doing.
Right. It's interesting that you say that. And I have a stepmother. Okay. And I mean, she's like a lot of what you might think of sometimes, like she's the nasty version of the stepmom. Okay. I know there's some great ones out there. She's the nasty one. And there was one thing that I learned from her though, and there was one thing that always resonated with me that she used to say over and over again was the everything is figure outable. Everything is figure outable. And that's one of those things that I think that you're talking about there, as far as kind of, a problem arises. It's like, okay, you can allow that to override your thinking and you can get sucked into the problem. But what does Albert Einstein say? That you can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. You've got to think beyond that. Where's the solution? Okay, what's next? How do we renegotiate this? What's the answer here? And I think that that's a very powerful mindset to adopt, or an attitude to internalize,
Well, and actually, you bring up a wonderful point, because everything is figure outable. And what I would suggest to all of you, whether you're working on a goal that's absolutely completely different from anything you've ever done before, or whether you just want to be exceedingly successful in the field, in the career, or in the, whatever context you want your success, sit down, take out a piece of paper, take out your journal. I've always got my journal right next to me, and it's, I don't know, it's my blessing. Yeah, it's the best 10, 20, however many dollars you spend for your journal. It's the best thing you've got. What I would suggest to you is go back and take a look at whatever it is that you're doing right now, with this thought process that you have right now regarding your goal, whether it's a career you're working on right now, or whether it's something entirely new. Step back from it and think, what do I really want to do? And what are different ways? What are better ways that I can be getting to that goal?
Right.
Because your mind will, and if you spend 15 minutes a day, force yourself to write a list, 10, 20 things. How can I be the best at what I'm doing right now? And what can I do to make me the best in that field? And you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be huge things. And if it is, just like anything else, you reverse engineer it into small pieces to where you can do something, maybe, I don't know, in 5 minutes a day, or 10 minutes, or an hour a day, that you can work toward it. I liken it. How many people love to ski? I love to snow skiers. Any snow skiers? Yeah, I love it. I love it. Isn't it so much easier to go down the hill when you lean forward a little bit? Isn't it so much, when you're standing straight up and your mass is just holding you down into that spot of the snow, you don't go anywhere.
Right.
You're just stuck.
Right. Yeah.
Who wants to be stuck? I don't know anybody that wants to be stuck.
Right. 100%.
And all you got to do, you put your shoulders straight across toward wherever it is you want to go, and your feet will take you. You don't care about the how. You only care about the result. You can have a million different hows. So it's like, if this is your goal way up here and this is where you're starting out, you might start out with one particular how, one particular plan, and say it gets you going and you're going up, you're doing good, and all of a sudden it levels off. Who knows? Maybe it even starts going down. Get a new plan, redraft, rethink it. And that's all I was really suggesting earlier. Rethink it. And who knows, maybe the new plan will skyrocket you up a little bit. Who knows? Maybe the new plan's going to, I don't know. However, if it does, go to a new plan.
Right. Yeah.
Plan. The how doesn't matter. You want to get your goal.
That's right. And, I oftentimes will say that, most people are in the habit of not thinking. And one of the best habits that you can develop is to do exactly that. Ask yourself those questions and just take a little pause and time out and step back from your problem to ask yourself, if there was a better way to do this, what might that look like? Just hypothetically speaking, what might be an easier or a better way? And when you ask yourself those questions and you start to get into that habit of asking yourself questions, that's thinking. And I believe it was Clement Stone, was it W. Clement Stone, that said that, most people don't think, and that he's made a reputation for himself by just making the habit of thinking once or twice a week, you know. And I think that there's real power in doing exactly that. And you know, we talk a lot about kind of asking ourselves those questions, spending time with pen and paper, allowing infinite intelligence to, you know, speak to us or to give us little nudges or signs or synchronicities and that sort of thing, and tell us that we're on the right path. But I have a question for you here. There are a couple of questions that really jump out at me, Gary. Is you know, obviously you're a big fan of Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, and I'm curious, what do you think is two-pronged question here? What do you think is the most important principle that Napoleon Hill talks about? And given today's day and age and the challenges that people are facing, what do you think is the most difficult one to master?
Okay. Best questions you could ask. And I think about this on a I think about those questions on a semi-regular basis. And I have a heck of a time having the most important thing in Think and Grow Rich, or in throughout Napoleon Hill's work. I go to this book and I think probably the best phrase or the best sentence that Napoleon Hill wrote was the one where he says, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve."
Right.
And I think if you will allow me to allow that to be the most important, because there's a lot that can be unpacked in that sentence.
Right.
Whatever you conceive, you got to know what you want.
Right.
And then believe. Now I'm going to back up. What's belief? Belief goes to faith. Now I'm not I feel like how many people have seen the movie The Secret? Have you seen The Secret, you guys? Yeah. Okay. Now The Secret, in my opinion, gave the first half of the answer. You have to know what you want. You have to get attuned to what you want. However, what's real interesting is in Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, chapter number 3 is faith,
Right.
which is belief, which is what I think The Secret was really all about. It's believe you can do it. What's real interesting to me is in all of Napoleon Hill's later works, where he talks about faith, the chapter isn't just faith. The chapter is always applied faith.
Right. You're right.
And so what is the thing that induces faith? It's in the latter half of the book. It's in chapter 9. It's persistence. And I love the persistence chapter. Here, I don't want to honk up the, here it is. He's got this sentence in here. There may be no heroic connotation to the word persistence, but the quality is to the character of man what carbon is to steel. So what does that mean? Steel is nothing more than iron ore with a little bit of carbon added to it. And with a little bit of process, it becomes very rigid and strong. Iron by itself is very weak. I don't know. Well, maybe that's not good. That's my muscle flapping, and that's my tricep flapping in the breeze when I'm very weak. Anyway, there's no heroic connotation. You don't have to be brave to be persistent. You don't have to be overly, you have to maybe have a little bit of courage. But what's courage? Courage is just acting when you're in a state of fear. You're going to do it anyway. So what am I saying? The quality is to the character of man. It's just persistence is just a little bit of, it's just one of the little ingredients that adds to your overall character that allows you to be a strong mentally, emotionally, I'll even say spiritually. I think that it will add physically too, if you choose that, if that's your goal.
Of course.
However, I feel that the mental and emotional and spiritual strength that you need in order to achieve a goal is sometimes much more important than just the physical.
You're
if that
right.
makes sense.
Yeah. And you know what? That's such a great thought that you shared there, Gary. And that quote that you shared from Napoleon Hill, that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And you know what? You could almost look at each one of those three sections or segments or words. And I think it's probably fair to say that, people could struggle with any one of those three things, or maybe a combination of all three. And one thing that I've observed coaching, all the people that I have over the years, is that people sometimes just have a difficulty opening their mind and their imagination to what might be possible for them to even conceive the idea of what it is that they want. And I always quote Mark Twain, who said that I can show anybody how to achieve anything they want. The only problem is I can't find anybody who knows what they want. So I think it's probably easy to say that, well, okay, some people maybe struggle with that conceive part, but then there's that whole idea of belief, and to believe that that might actually be possible for them, or that they're capable of achieving that. And then there's that whole achievement, and you got to persist in that belief long enough to achieve that. So those are three very powerful parts or components, and I can see people struggling with each of those for
And
different
that's
reasons.
exactly why I wanted to bring up persistence, because
Right.
persistence induces faith. You
Right.
act a little bit, you get a result, God willing, you get some positive result, and it increases your faith.
Right.
So the persistence induces the faith. It induces the belief. Whatever you conceive, you know what you want, and believe with applied faith, which means, in my view, with persistence. So when you asked what's the one most important idea out of Think and Grow Rich, I go to that phrase, and
Yeah, I
what
love
do I
it.
get? I get like three chapters.
Right. Kind of cheating there, Gary, but I
I
love it.
know, I
I love
know.
it. But you're right. Napoleon Hill says that it's not enough just to have faith. You must use it.
You
And I
have to
think that
use it.
that's the operative word there, is that applied faith. But actually, that brings me to a really important question that I'm super curious to hear your thoughts on. If I understand correctly, you grew up in a household, I think it was a religious household. Maybe it was a Christianity or Catholicism.
Yeah.
And my question for you is, how do you reconcile that kind of God paradigm or the religion idea with your work and your scientific background at NASA? And how does that play into your understanding of Think and Grow Rich, infinite intelligence, thought, energy, and things of that nature?
I sleep very well at night.
Okay.
And a lot of it is based on this question. And so when I think of this sort of a question, I have ended up going to what is the root definition of those two words, faith and science. And what I've come up with is, man just doesn't know. There is still, I mean, there was a point in time where man didn't realize. I mean, his experience was the law of gravity always worked. And so if I drop this pencil or this pen, it's always going to fall. It's always,
Of course.
one time it's not going to, go do a hard right.
Right.
So what is, so in the context that we're talking about here, what is faith? Faith is just having complete trust or confidence in something, I'll say, or even someone, without having any evidence of it being true, any physical evidence. So it's 100% completely based on a person's beliefs. And where do a person's beliefs come from? Typically, I don't know, probably 90+%, unless we've really worked on ourselves. From the time we're 18 years old, our beliefs come from all of the input that we've had from our environment, from our parents, and I will argue, based on the 90% of what's going in me, probably more than 90% for my parents came from their parents. And so
Right.
It's the same information all the way back, generations and generations and generations and generations. that is inside my mind as a young, as a young person, and then growing up. And then that is effectively what gets displayed. I loved Wayne Dyer. Does everybody
Right.
remember Wayne Dyer's
Love
where he
Wayne
talks
Dyer.
about the orange? You remember him
Yes, of
talking about
course.
the orange?
Yeah.
What's inside of, or what's, if I squeeze an orange, what comes out of an orange?
Orange juice.
Orange juice. Yummy, delicious, sweet orange juice.
Right.
Why? Because that's what's inside an orange.
Right.
Okay, if I were to squeeze one of you, what comes out of you? It's going to be what's ever inside of you.
Right.
And so if you've been fed, boy, what a great analogy in these days. Hamas, if you've been fed what I consider to be evil your entire life, and you get squozen, what's going to come out?
Exactly that.
It's not nice. Not nice behaviors aren't going to come out. And so with the faith, we're talking about the faith right now, and how did that come about? It's from these generations past, and so and far enough back. I mean, shoot, my parents both grew up without running water in the house, or indoor plumbing at all, or toiletries or electricity or any of that. And my grandfather, he was in a three-sided structure, 2 walls and a roof back in the 1940s. And his experiences all went into my mom. And that is part of what has made me up.
Right, of
My
course.
internal.
Yeah. Well, our paradigm, I mean, that just speaks back to that concept of the
exactly
paradigm
what
and
I'm
how
poking at.
that's generations old. It's ancient.
Yes.
And it kind of all bleeds into who we are and our thoughts, our belief systems, to a certain extent,
Yes.
our fears, our doubts, our insecurities, our worldview, certainly, but also our
Yeah.
perceptions about ourselves, isn't it?
Huge. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now, to kind of get back on track, we've kind of discussed faith for a couple of minutes. So now, what is science? Science is just understanding the observables that man can observe and measure.
Right.
And so at this stage of the game, what are we able to test? What are we able to observe? What do we really know as fact? Today, in Physics 1, you can learn the potential energy of this pen relative to my hand is the mass of the pen times the gravitational constant times the height to wherever it's going to land.
Right.
Just
I
a
tried to
couple of
forget all
hundred
that
years
stuff
ago,
the second I left
nobody
high
could
school.
predict that. And as soon as I let it go, it's going to that potential energy turns into kinetic energy that can do something, that can
Of
either,
course.
I don't know, depending on if I drop it this way, it ends up in the dirt or something.
Right.
Right. And depending on the softness of the dirt and the sharpness and the surface tension, the surface smoothness of this, will depend on how deep the pen goes.
Right. So let me ask you, in your mind, then, can science and faith coexist? And if so, how does that work as far as kind of but how do you believe in an infinite intelligence that's beyond your understanding while being such a man rooted in science?
Well, I am one. I am of the belief that universal intelligence, God, source energy, however, I do believe in God. So that's where I personally am. I don't believe there is any discrepancy. I just don't believe that man has figured out how to measure things or how to see things well enough. I mean, like there's they haven't figured out experiments with it yet. However, there's anybody have experience or read anything about quantum entanglement? Anybody?
A little bit. That's
A
still
little bit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just, at a very, very high level, I'll give a 1 or 2 sentence explanation. God willing, that'll be good. essentially what quantum entanglement says is that if you set up an electron to spin and it is within its quantum entanglement with another electron, and then let's pretend I had an infinite distance cannon, and I send one of these. Now these are both quantum entangled. Keep one here with us so that we can see it. And we take my infinite cannon and I blast that other one, I don't know, 100 million, 100 trillion, pick the biggest number you can think of, and let's just blast it way to the other side of the universe. And now these two electrons are still quantum entangled. So if I were to flip the spin on this one, the one that's so far away would instantly flip also.
Right. Yeah.
And how that works is beyond me right now. However, that's one of the biggest quantum theories that's going right now, which is as big as photoelectric effect, which is what Einstein got his Nobel Prize for. It's as big as relativity. I love the relativity talks. Oh my gosh, those are so fun. If you get a chance, go to Barnes and Noble and see, I can't remember the name of the book, but it's effectively Einstein in cartoons.
Okay.
And it has such a great explanation of the theory of relativity. He ends up having Santa Claus, and he talks about talking to Santa Claus, and while they're both going the speed of light, and then he gets off and stops, and if Santa is going faster, so there is faster than the speed of light, and I've worked with that myself. We've all, anybody in telecommunications has worked with faster than the speed of light, because the speed of light is within a trigonometric function, and within a trig function you can always add. However, it comes back, and so you end up seeing it. So anyway,
right. Well,
so anyway,
yeah, go ahead.
And science,
right?
I see them as coming closer and closer together all the time. 100 years, I mean, even in Think and Grow Rich, when was this published? 1937.
Right.
Think and Grow Rich, in one of the chapters, he talks about how everything is one of a couple of things, mass and energy. Well, since Einstein and all of the quantum guys have gotten together, we've come to understand that mass and energy are really the same thing.
Right.
And so in this, it still says matter and energy, and it's really, and matter is energy, and all it is that everything transforms from one to another, to another, to another. And so even in thought energy becoming your physical goal being manifested, there's another, from my opinion, faith turning into science, idea turning into a physical reality, whether it's a house, a boat, money, a relationship, health and fitness, whatever you choose.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you brought up Albert Einstein. And one of the reasons why is because I was just reading this book. It's called E Squared by Pam Grout. Are you familiar with this book, Gary?
I'm not. That's okay.
Okay. So it's essentially 9 do-it-yourself experiments that prove that your thoughts create your reality. Okay. And I think that oftentimes, we talk about these things and we think about them and we think, okay, well, it sounds cool, but do I really believe it?
Yes.
Do I have the ability to apply this belief, like you're talking about, that applied faith, and put this faith into action, or that belief into action? So this book,
what was the name of the author?
Pam Grout. Pam Grout.
How do you spell the last name?
Grout. And she's got a series of these little experiments that you can do at home on your own and that sort of thing. And one of the very first sentences in this book is a quote from Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein says that everyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that a spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to that of man.
Yep.
And I think that lends itself to your conversation there about reconciling kind of science and natural law or the laws that govern the universe and things like that. We talk a lot about our coaching programs. We talk a lot about energy and how Albert Einstein said too that everything is energy. Like your energy, I'm a form of energy, but our thoughts are a form of energy too.
Yes.
And I was hoping that you might be able to shed a little bit of light on something here for me. Okay.
Okay.
And in Think and Grow Rich, he talks about how our minds are a sending and receiving device, that we're constantly sending out information and receiving information. And the thought energy is not confined to time or space, in the sense that the second that we have a thought, it's immediately projected out into the universe, all corners of the universe. Okay. And I recall a conversation that you and I had together where you talked a little bit about some experiments that the Apollo mission crew at NASA was doing. And I think you cited a book called do you remember the book that it was from?
Yep. Yep. I pulled it out just in case.
Okay, the overview effect. Right. So can you tell me a little bit about that experiment that they did with the astronauts and what they discovered from that, or what they learned or took away?
Little bit. Let me see. In February of 1971, what was his name? I think it was Grisham. No, Captain Edgar G. Mitchell. He was the guy that got to stay in the spacecraft while the other guys went down to the surface of the moon.
Okay.
And so his spacecraft was orbiting the moon. And so there was a time where, say, Earth would be over here and the moon would be here, and say this is the moon now, and he's orbiting the moon. And so when he would be on the backside of the moon, they wanted to do 6 experiments. They only got 4 done. And honestly, it ended up being an unofficial experiment that was done. NASA didn't know before the experiment. They only knew after. And so anyway, Mitchell ended up having 4 people on Earth at very specific times attempting to tune in to Captain Mitchell's mind. You know how if you have a couple of tuning forks, if they're of the same frequency, you bounce one and you have it tuned and it's making the sound, and you bring the other one close to it and it'll pick up the frequency and it'll start vibrating also. If you guys have experience, you've seen that or heard it.
I've seen that, yeah.
Where you do the exact same thing, and here I am physically energizing my tuning fork. And then if I bring another one in that is not of the same frequency, it'll just sit there still as a church mouse and not move at all. Well, Captain Mitchell would be behind the moon, and he had 5 sets of cards, 5 each, that were all numbered, and they had different images on them. There'd either be a star or a cross, like a plus sign type of a cross, or a circle, or some squiggly lines. And he would focus very intently on the card, and the people on Earth, they would at the same time would be attempting to think of what, or to tune in to what Captain Mitchell was focusing on. And there were 4 people on Earth. 2 of the people, they weren't in tune with Captain Mitchell. However, 2 of the people with 50% little bit over 50% accuracy could tune in. Now you might think, okay, well, there's a certain percentage that, if you just guess, and you're right, and that percentage is only 40%. And so typically in most experiments, if you get 10% or more, that's considered statistically significant. And so it's meeting the criteria. And so there are a number, and what's interesting was, after the mission was done, Captain Mitchell ends up going and talking with Dr. J.B. Rhine, who, if you've read Think and Grow Rich, is mentioned in the chapter on the brain as being one of the leaders at Duke University studying such things. That's back in the 30s when Napoleon Hill was. So here's Captain Mitchell in the 1970s going to the same man and talking to him about essentially ESP or telekinesis,
Right.
and having conversations. And I can't remember the name of the foundation, but that was a study that Dr. J.B. Rhine did throughout his life, attempting to quantify this telekinesis or extrasensory perception, which kind of goes back to our faith versus science, because I feel, what does man really know yet? We're just, I don't know, out of 100 miles of stuff that man could know, I feel like we're a fingernail thickness of really understanding what's going on. Just my opinion.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, what's really interesting about that study that you did, the fact that they were able to achieve, let's call it 50% or a little bit more than 50% effective or accurate. You know, one of the things that I think about there is, well, hey, these are people who maybe, if we all, let's assume that we have the ability to be able to communicate with our thoughts and that sort of thing.
Well, we do. You do it all the time. All of us do it all the time. How many people have walked by somebody at a restaurant and you just walk past them and you know they're pissed, or you know they're completely in love, and you feel it. You pick it up.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. 100% through your intuition or whatever that might be, whether it's your creative imagination, we're picking up on those signs and those vibes and those frequencies all the time. But, you know, I often think that, you know, just because we have the ability to do that doesn't mean that we've necessarily perfected or practiced or gotten really good at it. And so some of those other experiments that you're talking about there, if maybe they've taken the time to practice it and to get the repetition in, that maybe those experiments that Apollo did would score even higher.
I completely agree with you. It's just like anything else. If you're in sales, you need to get your sales reps in. If you're a bodybuilder, you need to get your bodybuilding reps in. If you're no matter what field of endeavor that you're in, no matter what, you need to get your reps in. That's why I always, the people that I coach, I tell them, you've got to write your goal down every morning, every night, at least once. When we're first getting started, I have people writing it down 10 times. And they've got, honestly, I give people 3 different versions of their goal that I want them to write. There's one version that's the complete detailed version. What does your goal look like? What does your goal make you feel like? What does your goal, where is it going to get you mentally, meaning in education, in finances, in business? What's it going to do for you spiritually? And that can be 5 pages, 10 pages, as long as, and I really prefer people to continue and just make that as long as it is. And then I like another version of the goal that's something that's like, I don't know, half a page. And then I have another version of the goal that I like 10 words or less. And especially, and if you could get it down to even say 5 or 6 words, what I love getting I get my people calling me the finger man, because what I want them to do is at a red light. How long's a red light? Minute, 2 minutes tops, usually, something like that. Would you agree?
Sure, a few minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So I want their goal, the meaning of their goal, in 6 or 7 words or less, because when they're stopped at the red light, I want them sitting there with their hands on the steering wheel, and I'm going to pretend my goal is I am prosperous right now. And this whole idea came out of this other book. Where is it? Here it is. You Too Can Be Prosperous by Robert Russell. And his primary affirmation is I am prosperity. Now, sometimes I feel like my people can't identify with their goal in that 3-word affirmation. So I allow them, they choose to make their goal 6 or 7 words or less. And while you're sitting at the red light, I want them to say it 200 times. I am prosperity. 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 Prosperity. I am prosperity. I am prosperity. That was 10 times right there. So how fast was that? A couple of seconds. And as soon as I do, I here's my tens thumb. So my right hand is my units, and my left hand are my tens. And so you go through it, and you go through it, and you go through it, and you do it 200 times in the light. And I tell you, you jam your goal into your subconscious mind.
Right.
And then part of the magic of that is then when I ask them to write it, I usually in the morning I'll have them write the paragraph or 2 version, because I want them to have more detail, and I want them to be a little bit more slow about it. Sometimes what I do is I'll get them to how many people are right-handed? Raise your right hand. I would be asking you guys to write your goal with your left hand.
Okay, interesting.
Because it slows you down and it forces your goal idea. Your right hand, if you're right-handed, that means your left side of the brain dominant, typically. If you start writing it down with your left hand, you're forcing the right side brain lobes to link with your goal. To link with your goal. The other thing that I want my people to do is I want you to fuse with your goal. While you're writing it, I want you to, how is it going to feel when that is accomplished? Pretend your goal is a beautiful 5-bedroom, 6-bathroom house, open floor plan on the beach in a beautiful location. You're going to be writing that out, and the color of the house, and what kind of windows it has, and 1-story or 2-story, and what kind of a patio, and do you have a pool? And you're going to be writing all of that stuff. However, I want you in your heart. How does it feel having that? How does it feel living there? How does it feel to have your family over experiencing that beautiful house? And I really want you to get, Neville Goddard would say, one of his books is The Feeling is the Secret. The feeling of your goal accomplished. That's where you're going to get motivation. That's where you're going to get energy to focus on your goal, to persist towards your goal. So important to have the right motivation. So important to have the right goal. Do you really want your goal? Or is it your parents that want that goal for you? Hi, sweetie. Hey, pretty girl. Yeah. Is the goal true to you?
Right. So, Gary, I've got 2 quick little questions here for you, and this last one just came to me as you're describing this. But do you have any advice or suggestions on how people can get into that emotion of having the wish fulfilled or having achieved their goal? Because the reason I ask that is because our subconscious mind controls 95%, maybe even more, 98% of what we think and what we feel. And to a certain extent, a lot of those emotions then are memorized. And to try to get ourselves into an emotional state that's different than what we're used to feeling can sometimes be challenging for people. So do you have any advice or suggestions on how to get yourself into that emotional state or to change that vibration?
Absolutely. Number one, I suggest a morning routine. that you get into on a daily basis. The morning routine includes meditation, and that's the part that goes directly to what you were asking, Matt. I was in an event a couple of years back. It was 2 weeks before Dr. Dyer passed away, and where I got to meet Wayne Dyer. And lots of people, big crowd to go see him and buy a book and get him to sign the book for you, right?
Wow.
So I go up with my book and I have him sign the book, and I'm getting started to walk away. And I said, no, I've got to ask him this. Dr. Dyer, how do I know what I want? Was my question. And it was so, I don't know. I just love the guy. I'll never forget, if he's sitting this way and he's talking, and this is where the line is, I'm already way over here walking away. And just like we were talking about skiing earlier and fronting your goal, he turned and he fronted me, and he gave me his 100% attention. And he told me, he didn't know my name, but I'll pretend he did. He said, Gary, you have to get quiet. You absolutely have to get quiet. And then you ask yourself, what do I really want? And one of the exercises that I give my people is I said, go onto YouTube and pick a favorite quiet meditation. Whatever, I don't know if you guys are like me, but sometimes my heart gets going, and when I get quiet, even from my, like, if pretend right now is a resting state for me, which kind of is, I'm kind of, yay. When you'll know for you what a rested state is, and you'll know for you what a quiet state is and how different those are. So you want to get into a quiet state. And sometimes when I believe in God, and I'll ask, God, come be with me. Sit in my heart. Be with me now. Thank you for being with me now. And I've got my own, it was a thing that John Gray did. Boy, I have to see if I can find the link to that, if there was a link to it. I just saw John a couple of weeks ago, and it was, oh, the guy. It's, do you guys know John Gray? He wrote the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Right.
And a ton of other books. Just, he was a monk for like 10 years before he wrote any of that. He was just, the man is just spiritual. He has a beingness about him that's just calming and beautiful. So as your morning routine, meditation, get your journal out and write your goal. Take 5 minutes to write your goal. Now there's one method of writing. Maybe the couple of paragraph version of your goal will only take you a couple of minutes to write. Where that would be like, I'll call it the rote, where you write it the exact same way every morning. And then give yourself the liberty, give yourself the grace to continue to write what does that look like to you today, so that you can fuse with that in that moment, so that you can be one with your goal in that moment. I feel that universe, energy, God is omnipotent, all powerful, omnipresent. He is everywhere. He is in me, through you, everywhere. It's interesting. If you've ever, have you guys heard of anything about Krakarian photography?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, you guys, I don't know. You guys, no, okay. It's a form of photography that can see the electromagnetic energy coming off of your body. And so it's effectively, where your body physically is kind of all blacked out. And then it's all like these little, I don't know, hairs just coming out and just they're, I'm sure that if it was a moving picture, that it would be like moving, it'd be like the
Right. Vibrating.
electromagnetic, yeah, well, vibrating and flickering. And I don't know, I almost kind of, my analogy to that would be like an aurora borealis, different
Right.
colors and just different. So anyway, meditation, write your goal. I'd suggest writing 6 intentions for today. What are 6 things that I can do today? They don't have to be big things. It could be a simple, send an email, but those 6 things, they're not do the laundry. They're not go buy dinner or cook dinner. Those 6 things are goal achieving things.
Right. Right.
And then before you start working on those 6 things that day, I want you to prioritize them. What is the most important thing that you can do today toward your goal? Work
Right.
on that one first to completion. It needs to be finished before you go to the number 2 thing.
Right.
And then when number 1's done, you go to the next highest priority thing, you do that. Maybe you only get 4 of them done. So what? No big deal. You don't beat yourself up. You say congratulations. You give yourself a pat on the back. I did my best today. God bless me. I did my best today. God bless me. I'm a good guy. I got my goal. I worked on my goal today. I got some things completed for my goal today.
Gary, it's really interesting that you mentioned things like, the importance of kind of slowing down, being still, being quiet, going into meditation and that sort of thing, and the importance of an empowering morning routine. And the reason I say this is because I've attended different kind of workshops and seminars and things like that with the intention of learning what I can do to try to build my online presence and build my Instagram following and build, my business and put myself out there. And, a lot of times I'll hear similar things and I'll hear things like, well, do more videos, do Instagram lives, do a daily Instagram live and do all these things. And those are things I keep hearing. And I'm like, well, yeah. I know I hear that. But aside from that advice, what else should I be doing? And it's like, no. Those are the things that you have to do in order to grow your online presence and build your Instagram following. And when I think about this kind of thing, when it's like, how do you tap into the emotion? It's like, be still, be quiet, slow down,
Is that what you really want,
meditate.
Matt?
What's that?
How big a business do you want?
How big a business do I want? I have a goal right now to have 100 clients.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Active.
Active. Yeah.
Perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You can do that. That's easy.
Yeah.
You can
Well,
do that.
that's in progress as we speak.
That's
Yeah.
okay. That's here.
Right.
You're here with,
Right.
and the 6 things are part of the how. You can do it. You can do
Right.
it.
And I think that I'm probably just as guilty as others where it's like, okay, well, I could probably get better at being still, being mindful, meditating, setting those daily intentions. When we hear things like that, sometimes I think we have make the mistake of thinking, well, yeah, I know, I've heard that before, but like, what else could I do that's not that thing? And it's
You
like,
just keep being your awesome
those are the
self. And you're
things
gonna
that you
you're
got to
gonna be
do.
great. You just keep being your awesome self. You're gonna be great. No,
Gary, I
it's a
appreciate
piece of
that.
cake. It's a piece of cake, dude. You can do it.
Well. Hey, Gary, I want to be respectful of your time and I want to be respectful of everybody else's time here. I've had an absolute blast chatting with you. And
You
I
always
feel
do.
like, this is the kind of thing that I could go on and on with. And I'm just grateful to have this extra time to spend with you. But I'm curious, what's the best way for anybody to get in contact with you if they'd like to connect or learn more? Or how do they keep in touch if anybody's looking at, following up with you?
You know what? If they'd like to, we're having let me see. For me, I'll put my email address in the chat. You're more than welcome to, if you want to have a chat about something, I'm always open for chats. And right now I'm associated with the Napoleon Hill Institute, which is well aligned with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. The work is so good. Anyway, this week we're going to be having a free self-confidence workshop. So if you've ever done the self-confidence formula straight out, what was it, page 72, if I remember right, 72 to 74 in this version, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be, it's going to be for 1 hour a day, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, all free. It's going to be from the leadership from the Institute. So Cleona O'Hara, probably Kiara, probably we'll see Don Green, who is the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. So if you guys want to see a great guy, look up Don Green on Facebook. The guy is he just kicks butt, man. The guy and stories of the stuff he's done. He's an older gentleman today. However, he's done stuff talking about Think and Grow Rich, and he took the lead of the Napoleon Hill Foundation when W. Clement Stone stepped down. And so that's part of and then before Stone, W. Clement Stone, it was Napoleon Hill in charge of the foundation. And so, and who was W. You might ask, well, who was Stone besides W. Clement Stone? Ended up being he was the world's richest man for a time. Let me see. Yeah. Sometimes I have to check my spelling, Do you have that? I have that problem. Oh boy.
All the time.
So anyway, my email's in the chat, Gary@GaryGlassConsulting.com. And then I'll put a link in the chat as well for the self-confidence camp workshop. W. Clement Stone in the early 1960s was the world's richest man. And he went from essentially a pauper growing up in Chicago to becoming the world's richest man through selling life insurance. And his story is fabulous. He ended up meeting Napoleon Hill back in the late 1950s, and Hill had already retired the first time. And Stone tells Hill, oh, you can't stop your philosophy. It's far too important. You have to keep going. So what does Hill say? Hill says, well, tell you what, I'll do it. I'll come out of retirement if you're my business manager. I love it. And so they teamed up. They ended up making a TV show in the late 50s, early 60s. Maybe you get on YouTube and look up Napoleon Hill videos. You'll just amazing. Anyway, self-confidence camp coming up later this week. I'm sure if you register for it, if you can't make the time, that there will be recordings.
Beautiful. Awesome.
One last bit.
Okay, one last thing here.
I got it. My opinion is, I mentioned what I thought one of the most important sentences is in Think and Grow Rich, and that was, whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. The most important question in the whole book is this very first question. And I'm gonna bring it up here. What do you really want? What do you want? There is no reason in the world that you can't get it. If a sewer cleaner can become a NASA engineer, can start teaching people how to become successful themselves, anybody can. Whatever your dream is, dream it, believe it, have the self-confidence in yourself that you can do it, go do it. I know you can. You need to know you can. If you have any doubts at any time, remember this. I know that you can. Borrow my belief in you. Borrow it. You can borrow it. I'm happy to give it. Go do it. Go do it. Be your best selves. God bless y'all. If you have any
questions, I love that, Gary. I've just gotten chills. you know, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time out of your busy day. I know everybody's busy and we got a million things we could be doing and a million places we could be at. The fact that you took time out of your schedule to be with us today means the world to me. So thank you for being here. I always appreciate our time together, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and I look forward to talking with you guys soon. Take
God
care,
bless,
everybody.
Matt. Appreciate you. God
Thanks,
bless you. I
everybody.
love you all. God bless. Bye-bye.